Hi, everyone. So you might be seeing us in person right now, so this might be a little weird, but we are on Zoomception. I'm Alessandra. I'm here with Kathy and Adriana, our other curators for the Lehigh Valley LGBTQ Plus Film Series. We hope you enjoyed this screening of Mutt. We wanted to introduce a very special guest, Cole Doman, who plays John in the movie. So hi, Cole.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad I could do this recording and we can talk about the film a little bit for the audience who so graciously came.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for your time. So we're going to get started. I have some questions, and then Adriana and Kathy will be asking some questions. You will hopefully be answering them. But first and foremost, I know this is kind of a thing that you connected with Kathy with over the summer, but I understand that you have some roots in Philadelphia, and that also you began your career as a theater actor. So would you mind sharing a little bit about your upbringing in Philly and your early experiences in theater?
Yeah, so I was born in the city, on Second and Pine, and then we moved to like Montgomery County area, so kind of all over that general area, like Wyncote, and then most of my time was spent in Ambler, Fort Washington. And now my parents are back in the city in South Philly in Pensport. So yeah, I'll be going over there for the Christmas holiday just like next week. So I love coming home to Philly. And so my background, my mom was always really obsessed with the arts. So we grew up going to like the orchestra and the art museum and the theater that would come through, and then also the Philadelphia local theater, which then as sort of as a young person, like starting at like 11, 10, I started getting involved with like back in the day, it used to be called the Rainbow Company. It was at the Prince Music Theater, which I think no longer exists, unfortunately. But I did some like a couple of like professional productions as a child in Philly. So I would leave school early, Upper Dublin High School, and yeah, and I'm proud to be from Philly, and I love coming home whenever I can. Yeah.
That is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And my other question I wanted to ask, so something that we curators here strive to do with our film series is we like to amplify anyone and any story that we can in the realm of responsible storytelling. And I think this notion is beautifully exemplified. And I believe it was an Anthem magazine article, and I think you were quoted in it. And the quote was, "You have to make the world as inclusive as possible, and that starts with conscious casting and conscious storytelling." Could you elaborate on what conscious storytelling means to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think oftentimes we think about seeing ourselves on screen in art, in plays, in TV, in film, and for so long, I mean, especially when I was growing up as like a young gay man, especially, you don't really have these reference points of like a healthy or someone just kind of going through their day-to-day life or like the struggles that come up, and so you don't have these touch points of maybe necessarily how you're going to deal with these things, and it can become very like an isolating experience. And so even on that note, like it didn't even feel possible that I could even be in a movie. Like I only thought about like being in like a Broadway musical because that seemed like the only thing that was I was had access to. Um, and luckily, over the years, that's evolved. But I think when we are watching movies and we see, especially a lot of these actors who are when there are queer stories being told, a lot of times these actors are not part of the community, and I don't blame the actors. I think, and I don't really even blame the directors. I blame the higher ups, the studio executives who are greenlighting these projects. It's those people that have the power to say this story is important, let's put our money behind it, this director has a perspective that is unique and personal, and it deserves to be heard, and it deserves to be invested in financially, like not just emotionally but financially, so that these stories can be told. And so you create, you give money to, like, say, like a trans filmmaker like Vuk, and he is able to create this world and bring in, our crew for Mutt was mostly people in the queer community. So, and most of the actors are queer. And, there's this bond and there's a safety that goes into making a film that requires an insane amount of vulnerability. And when you feel like you're being supported and you see familiar faces amongst the people that are holding the camera and operating the lights, the grips, the gaffers, it just makes the whole experience feel a lot safer. And therefore, you make a better movie because everyone feels like really amped up to be there and supported.
Thank you so much.
So I was hoping you could talk a bit about your process as an actor, generally, just how you found your way into this character of John. But then also more specifically, you um this film explores I think a lot of like shifting notions of identity and shifting relationship dynamics, and is centered around a relationship and a scenario that I think is still very underexplored in film. And so I was curious, did you feel any pressure, to really sort of get it right, so to speak, as an actor when you came into this production?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, it's a great question. First of all, because Vuk, our director and writer, he had been working on this script for like 5 or 6 years, like since out of undergrad, and had gone through countless producers meetings, trying to get this movie greenlit. Make as even the movie that we made, for as little as we made it, it was still a miracle it got made in the first place. And so when he reached out to me with this saying, "Hey, I think you could do this role. Could you give it a read?" I read it and I thought, exactly what you said. Like, where have we seen this sort of trans representation, day in the life, a trans person be sexy and vulnerable and angry and wrong, or hurt, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. And on top of that, like even just from like it's for the laundromat scene, for example, like showing top surgery in a way that is incredibly sexy and vulnerable. I mean, that is groundbreaking. I
Yeah.
don't think we've seen it like that before ever. So I knew there was something special. And yeah, of course, there's an intense amount of pressure, and also it was a very different kind of role for me to play from my like previous work. So that excited me and scared me, and I think also the fact that I happen to also be a gay man and part of this community where I have a lot of people in my life who I love who are like trans men and trans women and non-binary people. Like, I think there was a comfort with the body and just like existing in a space with this community that is really comes naturally to me because of my friends, uh, and so I think there was a safety in the conversations we had around, that Leo and Vuk felt like they could have around me. That maybe if I was not part of this community, there would be fear that they would be misinterpreted, or that the actor who playing John, if it wasn't me, would say the wrong thing or offend someone. And
Right. Yeah.
Luke created an environment where, and I told him this from the beginning. I said, I love you, and I now love Leo, but I have to stand up if I'm going to play this part authentically. I have to stand by John, and what that means is like, potentially say like feeling in the moment in the scene work. I have to stand up for the language that he's using, whether it's violent or not. Like, I have to stand up for John because that's like how I have to work as an actor, and I think that meant a lot to Zook because he wants the movie to be as authentic as possible. And this is someone who, you know, John is someone who is grieving in a way a body that he loved, and I think other people would be afraid to say that. And it doesn't mean this person, you don't love this person, but there's a lot of confusing feelings, desire, attraction, shame, and I think in order to access all of that, I had to be really, we had to create an environment that was really open for conversation and even saying the wrong thing. And it created a stronger bond ultimately between me and Leo, and it created a stronger bond between me and Vuk. And I think hopefully it made Vuk and Leo feel like they could be really comfortable and go toe to toe with me and like, do the work.
Yeah. That's a great response. Vaughn's thanks. And I think that everything that you talk about really shows off in the performance that we see on the screen. You completely embody this character, and I think you bring a lot of pathos and a lot of dignity to a character who I think might be difficult for some people to relate to or understand.
Yeah.
But you really humanize him.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great to see you, Cole.
Great to see you.
I just found out, and I'm very curious about, I'm sure the audience is, the filming of Mutt actually had a very tight schedule. If I understand, 24 days across 37 locations. It sounds like a very significant undertaking. Can you share how that experience was during production for you and the cast?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of like guerrilla filmmaking. You know, like we're shooting in Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan, like you said, 24 days, 37 locations, with basically a skeleton crew. And the way that we were able to do that, I think, is first of all, everyone that was there wanted to be there, you know, because when you're making a movie, a really ultra low budget indie, no one's there for the money. They're there because they want to tell the story and they want to tell it the best way they can. And also because Vuk, previously to directing and writing Mutt, had worked in G&E for 10 years. That's how he makes money. So every set that he's been on countless features, short films, TV shows, all shooting in New York. So anyone in his time over the last 10 years that he thought was like exceptional at their job and bonded with, he asked them, finally pulled that favor of being like, hey, I'm doing my movie now. Can you come and work on this? So it was a really strong crew. Like our crew worked their ass off, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without that. And also the shorthand you get, we had a little bit of rehearsal, me and Leo. We hung out for a couple days before we started shooting so that we could build that chemistry immediately. I had worked with the DP already on a short film that I did. So we already had a working relationship. I trusted him that he was going to shoot me, well, and had a vision. So there was just a lot of trust. And I think that's, ultimately how you make it work. I mean, but everything was a miracle. Losing locations the night before, trying to scramble to find a new apartment so that our crew can set up. I mean, losing the bar 2 days before. Our producer, Alexander Stegmeyer, just like hustling the whole time. Everyone's nonstop. But I love working like that. Like my I grew up doing theater, but my background, like as a professional actor, has mostly been in indie cinema on low budget movies. So I love that feeling of that adrenaline I get when everyone's just like there to make the best like piece of art they can.
Well, you did. It was a wonderful film. Finally, just looking ahead, because you're very busy, you came with a history of work, but are there any projects you currently are working on that you would like to discuss or share with our audience?
Yeah, sure. I have two movies that are going to come out this next year. One is with Mubi, and it's called My First Film, and it's a debut feature from a filmmaker named Zia Enger, and it's sort of like a meta ensemble drama experimental film. And one is with Shudder. It's a horror film with this director Matt Pfeiffer, who this is his second film. He had a indie called Cicada a couple of years ago, and so that'll be out as well. And then I'm gearing up to shoot a Apple limited series in February.
Nice. Kathy was laughing because like I'm a huge horror nerd and I also program a horror.
Oh yeah.
So I'm very interested in
that
yeah. One. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. It was a wild ride, similar super low budget, 25-day shoot. But Shudder, they're doing cool things and they're giving money to the right people. So it's kind of like a queer sort of psychosexual thriller.
Sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it's called Treatment. So yeah.
Incredible, Cole. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and your upcoming projects and then answering all of our questions. Kathy and Adriana, is there anything else you'd like to say?
I mean, I'd just like to state again, like how grateful we are that you've taken the time to speak to us today. We all are big fans of Mutt, and I'm super looking forward to seeing more of your films in the future, especially the horror one. Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but this was great.
Next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Excellent.